Welcome to the 21st Century Writer, a podcast devoted to helping you set the mindset to be a writer in the 21st century. My name is Diane Patterson. I'm a novelist and blogger, and with me is my co-host.
I'm Hannah Steenbach, a German writer and therapist and coach.
And our very special guest today is, well, there's cool sound effects I could use, but Simon Whistler, the host of the Rocking Self-Publishing podcast. If you are not listening to this podcast, you are missing a real treat because Simon hosts a party every week and everyone is invited. He talks to various authors about what they did to achieve success in the world of self-publishing. Welcome, Simon! Yay!
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here. And by everyone is invited, you just mean the sole guest that I have on the show each week, right?
No,
everyone's invited to listen.
One of the things I love about your podcast is you are having a good time, and you are just sharing that with people. I'm taking a walk downtown, listening to the podcast, and I feel like I'm hanging out with my friends because you're so enthusiastic and happy about things. I love it.
Very kind. Thank you.
So of course we didn't ask Simon here. Whoa, hello. We didn't ask Simon here to talk about his podcast, although he is welcome to. It is. I will have a link to it in the show notes. It is great. I actually wanted to talk to him about another project he has. The way Hannah and I originally met was in a business-focused mastermind program that's run by business coach Christine Kane. And her mastermind program is pretty much focused on, I would say, coaches or therapists or teachers, people who usually charge by the hour, and she wants to move them out of that model and move to a different model. It's sometimes hard to adjust these things for writers. Sometimes I'm sitting there going, this is not going to work for me. And then I saw your program and I was like, wow, somebody could run a mastermind for writers. What a fantastic idea. Why don't I ask Simon how he does that and what goes into that? So, quick introduction in case you've never heard of what a mastermind is. Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich talks about one of the important elements of success is to set up a mastermind alliance, and he describes that as a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. Sounds easy, right? You get together with some friends, you talk about what you're doing, ... profit. Something, I don't know. So
that's the theory.
That's the theory. Okay, so now with that introduction, I want to turn it over to Simon, and he can talk a little bit about his experience with masterminds and how he got to this place. So.
Sure. I think I love that definition by Napoleon Hill, and I think the bit about it being easy. I think the internet has made this so wonderfully easy because it's not like you have to find friends and get them to sit around a table. It's like you can find anyone in the world. I mean, here we are. I'm broadcasting from Prague. Hannah, you're in Germany?
I'm in Germany. Yeah. I'm in Kiel in the north of Germany.
And Dan, you're in the US, right?
I'm in California.
And to me, even this sort of thing where you have just people who are on kind of a similar path, thinking about similar things, getting down and sitting down and talking through an idea, and it's kind of meta. I guess this is like a mastermind about masterminds in a way, but just that kind of sharing of information about people on the same paths. And I think connecting people who are doing similar things, connecting people who are, and again, I think because there's so easy access to people, you can find like within the group of writers, writing is a huge community. Then within self-publishers, that's still a huge community. And then whether that's, aspiring self-publishers who are yet to publish, or self-publishers who are doing it a while, or self-publishers who are making millions of dollars or whatever, then, there's all different places and all different things. And I think the internet can bring these people together to form these new generation of masterminds, which I mean, the reason that I started this one was because I've been in several masterminds and they've just been so valuable to me. I've been in communities of people doing similar things. It sounds like both of you have. I've never had a coach, which is something that has been on my radar lately of things to look into. And I know that's slightly different from a mentor, which is another thing. I've never had like a formal mentorship, but I've had like mentors who I've looked up to. And I think I don't think enough thought is often put into people. It's kind of, a lot of it is like, oh, so you need to learn how to do this and you need to learn how to do this and you can follow a course. But sometimes there's an enormous benefit in just being around people who are doing the same thing as you, and maybe someone like, I'll give you an example. So one of the mastermind groups I'm in right now with some other authors is like, I'm the audio guy. Like, I know about podcasting and I know about audiobooks. If someone wants to start a podcast in that mastermind group, they know they can get on the phone with me for as many hours as it takes. And then in return, I know nothing about writing sales copy. Like, I cannot sell myself for diddly. And so I'm like, to another guy, I won't name the names. I think, again, another great thing about masterminds is they can be private, and I won't share the people I'm in the mastermind group with, but they're like, yeah, I'm a good copywriter. I can do that for you, and you've helped me so much. And even if I hadn't, it's like, you know, at some point it'll come around that I will offer them something, and it's just, and I think that leads on to a whole other thing about these are people who are invested in your success. Like, I think in the whole group, like, you can zoom out and be like, okay, so the self-publish as a whole and then authors as a whole. And the further you zoom out and the more people you put into that bucket, the less personal it gets. And then the more people are like, I need to do what I need to do. I need to get ahead. And when it's big, that can be at the expense of other people. But when it's small, I think that can be, there's a huge synergy you can get. And then people are like, I want to succeed and I want you to succeed. And let's all succeed together. And I think in smaller groups, that's enormously powerful. And this all leads back to, why did I start this? I'm taking a really long way to answer this question. I apologize. Which is basically, I believe in the power of connections and small groups and being in touch with people who are doing the same thing as you. And not even exactly the same, but, you know, that same path, that same mindset of positivity and let's all go win together. Does that make sense?
No, that's...
It does. It does.
One of the things that that I'd wondered about, actually, because you've had so many really great people on your podcast talking about their successes, talking about what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. But your podcast is open, and, you know, it's broadcasting to whoever wants to download it. Whereas Mastermind is, in general, a closed off. I mean, you don't talk about who's in it, you don't talk about what they're doing. And I'm not going to ask you about any of that today. This is all very general stuff.
You can, please. I just didn't want to name people. I mean, it's a small group, but otherwise, I'm completely open. You can ask whatever you want.
Okay.
Well, one question that popped up for me is there an ideal size for a mastermind? Because I'm fairly certain that, I mean, like, 2 people is not enough to create synergy. 2, 3 is probably just a seed point for a mastermind. And then you mentioned that if the group gets too big, people start losing that personal feeling, they start losing that connection. So is there any experience that you have about a sort of an optimal size?
I'm hoping that as I get there, I will discover this. I think there can be like a one-on-one mastermind relationship, but I would more call it like the accountability partner idea.
Yes.
And I think like you can go into that and it can be like just someone to like bounce ideas with and be like, all right, I'm getting this done by next Monday. And the other person's like, yeah. And then you just go and do it. And then I was once in one where it was, do you know Kiva? It's like... oh
yeah, the donation organization?
Right. So in this mastermind, this was more than one-on-one, but the idea was accountability. It was there were 3 of us and then 4 of us later, and it was like if you didn't meet your goal, you would have to donate. I think it was $5, so it wasn't like breaking the bank, but it was like there was some very benefited goat farmer in Northern Africa from our failure to get our stuff done.
I love the idea.
There are other ones where you choose a charity, like I like giving my money to goat farmers in North Africa, so it's like I did feel too bad about it, but there are other ones where it's like, you know, XYZ political party that you don't support. You can write a check to them.
That's the one I've heard. If you don't meet your goal, you have to donate so much to the
XYZ political. Yeah. Let's keep it non-partisan. But yeah, and in terms of size, like I'm involved in several different groups, and I think the core group I run is a forum, and in that there are individual masterminds. So I think in the forum context, there's basically it's a closed garden, so people can't see what you're posting. I think we have about 60 to 70 members right now. And even at that size, it's not like we're all getting on the phone every week. It's kind of we're all in the same group. And at this size, it's great so far. There's still that sense of if I post something, it's not going out to the world. So I might post some mindset thing that I'm not comfortable with people, you know, being able to Google, or I might share some problem that I'm having with my writing or with my business that won't, you know, get out there. And also, one thing that I do believe that will be able to make it grow bigger without having the, you know, how public is this? Is there a troll in here sort of thing, is I enforce a real name policy. Or, because it's a writer's forum, it can be your big pen name policy. So if you're like, never shared your name with anyone, but you're known as this person, then that's who you are in the forum, and everyone has this, and everyone has like their real photo on their profile thing, because I think that keeps people honest, and it keeps out that negativity, which I believe is super important. And then smaller from there is I'm involved currently with 2 masterminds. One is 7 people, and one is 4. The one with 4 is much more kind of like, I'll share my personal issues, not like personal issues, but like, this is getting me down, I don't want to do this anymore, or like, you know, this kind of stuff. And then with the other one, it's more kind of like, okay, so I need to go here, does anyone have this sort of information you can help me with, or pass on to me, can I ask someone for this? That kind of more, less of a broad perspective, more of a specific thing. So that's my masterminds.
So we'll have a link to Simon's program in the show notes. When you say that it has individual masterminds within it, so people join your program and then find a mastermind to join, or are they simply randomly assigned to a group?
It's all self-starting, so you can come in, and I think the main benefit is actually the forum. The masterminds are kind of a subset of it, and I believe that in the internet world, a forum can be a mastermind of sorts, especially when it's private, especially when the people involved all have, you know, they're all at a certain level, they're all of that kind of let's go do it mindset. But then within, if you want to start a group, it's kind of like there's documents, and it says like you should do this, lay it all out, who do you want to join, invite people, or have people pitch up, and then kind of self-organized depending on the topic.
So it's like every bulletin board, every writer's bulletin board that I've ever joined, even if everyone has sort of, starting a million years ago back with Genie, anybody heard of Genie? To the present, it seems like every bulletin board splits into the success stories and everybody else. And
yeah,
the success stories kind of, they always want their own space. And then when they get there, they kind of don't talk. It's like the conversation dies or something. How do you keep it going? How do you get people to keep talking to one another?
I think the way I started the group was, as you know, I think I'm on like interview 105 or something, and I started the group maybe after 50 or 60 interviews. And I was connecting so many people. I was like, hey, you should know this person because of this. And then, have you met this person? And, oh, you guys, if you're in a box set, you should get in touch with so-and-so. And then I was like, why am I doing all these emails? And so I sent it out to, I think, 20 people who I'd kind of had like ongoing email relationships with afterwards, or maybe had a Skype call. And it was like, would this be useful to you? Do you want this? If I made a group that was kind of specifically for, because I interview people, and this is where the genesis of it being kind of a group for people a bit further along the path came in, because of the people I'm interviewing. And I said, if you were interested, would you be interested in this? And so I put together a forum with, it was originally on Ning, which is, I guess, like the modern version of like a bulletin board, which was a total disaster. It was like, it was hard to use, it was not customizable at all. And so I had, I had like these 30 people in there. And they're like, Simon, this is really cool. I love being able to connect with these people, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't. But Ning sucks.
But we're not doing it here.
So I had to switch everyone over to a new platform, which is fantastic and I love, and it's open source and it's customizable. So now I think, you know, it's still a small group. So someone said, oh, I want this. And so I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can probably find like there's vanilla forums, the forum for vanilla forums where there's developers you can hire and find and they can make things for you. And it's enough about the technology. This is not what we're talking about. But so yeah, put in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's cool to know that this is easily possible. I mean, but like you said, enough tech. I'm with a different message board provider, and they would do the same. But it's awesome knowing that this is organized in that way. I love the idea of having this forum. Specific and secret, or people can self-organize in.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's not a new concept, and I think there are private Facebook groups is the big one. Like, there's a lot of authors who organize into these groups and do box sets through that. But these always seem to be a bit more like you have to be invited or know someone or stuff like this, whereas I made it kind of meritocratic. And I say that, but at the total beginning, it was just me inviting people I knew. So, but then I was like, listen, if you want to be a part of a serious group, you can apply. There is a process. It's not based on who you know. It's based on what you've done or where you're going. And I think that's just, I like things where you can get it on merit rather than who you've networked with, basically. And that's what I wanted to make. Also, again, going back to technology very briefly, I think having something you can customize and make specific for your audience is really awesome. And then it's also not on Facebook, so they don't call the shots. And it will be the same next week if I want it to be the same next week, rather than Facebook like, oh, we're changing it.
Yeah. Surprise!
Yeah.
And
that's been shared is now fully public.
Yeah.
And I honestly think Facebook groups do not really lend themselves to good discussions because of the nature. Discussions disappear, and in a forum-like structure, you can much more easily resurrect a thread or point people to one, and that's not possible in a Facebook group. I really think they're not conducive to really deeper discussions over time.
Absolutely. I think Facebook's model is about content going, you know, lots of content coming in and content getting old, and, you know, kind of like the news feeds, you know, it's just news. Yes. It's not information, it's news. It's
ping that
fleeting.
You're getting something new, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, little dopamine
discussions.
Yes.
Not a good place for discussions.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on one Facebook group that has, I actually haven't looked recently, but I believe the last time I looked, it had 500 authors in it. And anyone can join this so long as you have actually published an indie book. And you have to sort of find it. It's not that hard to find, but you have to follow the breadcrumbs. Mm-hmm. But it's the same 50 to 75 people who are always posting. So there are, you know, 90% of the people on this group are lurkers, or not paying attention at all, but probably lurkers. Yeah. How do you deal with that? Or do you deal with that? I mean...
Absolutely. I think one of the things, like, following the breadcrumbs is one thing, but, I mean, for this one, there's an application and it has several questions, and also, if I'm on the fence, I'll be like, let's jump on Skype, just 5 minutes, and let me just ask you some questions. Because for me, the big thing is, it's not about... It is about like how far you've come and stuff, because I think, you know, when I started the group, those were it was the previous interviewees, and I wouldn't want to bring in complete newbies to the group because then it would kind of be a different thing. But it's also like, what's your attitude? And I think through an application form and through an interview, you can just be like, oh, okay, so this person is totally going to crush it because they're just like go, 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 and, you know, you get that vibe, you know, and I think that's just something that some people have, and some people are, maybe I don't know how to say it, like less driven, less certain of their path, or whatever. But in terms of, I think having that hurdle to get through makes it, when you're in, you're more likely to be like, okay, so the people in here also went through this. They're all kind of the same mind. And I think, and from the data, I mean, of course, there are people in my forum who lurk, but it's nowhere close to 90%. You can look through and you can see, okay, you can see when people were last active, and some people, I will admit, it's been like, oh, so it's been like 4 months since you've even logged in, but that's fine. I mean, you're always going to have some percentage, but I think in terms of just the lurking percentage is so low. It's just, I mean, and I'm also in other groups, and groups where I am totally a lurker as well, and so I know what that's like, and I think just this group manages to avoid that, which is wonderful. I think it's only 60 people so far, and I imagine as it grows, the number of people lurking would grow as well, because it's just the nature of things, and I will combat that with new and ingenious methods when the need comes, but I'll work those out when I need to.
So do you have rule in any of your masterminds? Are all of your masterminds writing focused, by the way?
No, one is not. One is, but it's more kind of mindset and motivation. One is totally not, and one is the forum itself. So yes.
So what are some of the rules and procedures? I'll start you off with the rules that we have for a mastermind that I'm in. We get there, we go around, I think there's 4 of us in it. Everyone says something new and good that happened in the past week, even if it is, I found a really great new chocolate bar. It has to be, you have to start off with something positive. You say what things you actually meant. We go over the list of what you were supposed to accomplish last week, what things you actually accomplished, and then 3 or 4 things that you're going to commit to for the coming week. And if anybody needs help, then we go into that. And then we meet weekly via Google Hangouts, so we can meet face-to-face, because we're all scattered all over the country too.
Yeah.
So how do your masterminds work?
I would lead on mine by saying face-to-face, like, and by that I totally mean Google Hangouts or GoToMeeting or Skype, some reliable video conferencing thing, because I don't feel that telephone calls, or I've seen masterminds done via purely forum or purely email, and especially on the accountability side of things, and I don't think that is a good place to start. I think if you're committing to a mastermind, commit to doing the face-to-face, get on Google Hangouts, and it's so easy, it's so free, get everyone's time zones aligned, and show up. And I think that showing up factor relates into number 2 of the thing, is commitment. Like, if you don't show up 2 or 3 weeks in a row, you're not going to be able to show up on the 4th week, because no one's going to want you back. And I think that's really, unless you've got a good reason, of course. But I think that's vital, because if there's a group, say 4 people, and one person is flaky and doesn't show up all the time, and everyone else is turning up every week and sharing their problems and sharing their successes, I don't think it's good to have someone who isn't that committed. I think everyone should be committed the same amount, and that's demonstrated by showing up. So one of the rules we have is, if you don't show up for 2 or 3 weeks, there's going to be a vote on whether you stick around, and if you continue to be flaky, then you'll probably be thrown out of the group, which seems kind of harsh, I guess, but I think it's pretty essential.
Having been in enough writing groups where people showed up or didn't show up, and whenever they showed up, they had pages they wanted to work on, and then we worked on their pages, and then the next week they were gone when would be working on someone else's pages. And
so one of the groups is much more like... Sorry, go on.
The thing is, if there's a group and they're working together, there is mutual growth. They are moving into different mindsets. They have common experiences, mutual experiences. There's growth, and if someone misses that for a couple of weeks, they get left behind. So in the long run, there's just the fit goes away. So it makes a lot of sense to keep a group together and active.
Totally. And I think two of the groups I have. One is the kind of, I guess, the round robin model where it's, what did you do this week? What are you working on? What do you need help with? And then each person will whip around the group. But then there's the other one, kind of the more bring your pages model, and we sit down with you and we go, it's 3-on-1. It's kind of the hot seat model for that week. And that one, if you're not showing up, like if you come like every 4 weeks for your one, yeah, people are just not going to show up for your one because it's,
Yeah.
I said earlier, like the benefit of the masterminds is the mutual trust, and that's just a violation of that. It's not cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think also have a structure. Like Diane, you mentioned yours, and I think this is there was one, and we had a new guy join the mastermind, and he was like, guys, this is great. You're all doing this stuff. But the calls run for like an hour, and then you go half an hour over. There's this thing called 6-hat thinking. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this.
No.
I can't even remember who it was. I think maybe I can remember his first name. It was Edward, but that's totally not going to be helpful. But I'm sure if you Google 6-hat thinking, it will come up. And basically, it's a way of like structuring a meeting where you kind of go through the risks and then the benefits and then I've been doing this for months, and I can't even name the 6 hats, but the 6 different things you go through at each meeting, and basically it's just a really awesome way of structuring it, and then everyone gets to say something, and so the quiet people in the group are brought up, and then the loud people in the group are brought down. Like, despite the fact that I seem to be doing a lot of talking now, generally I'm the guy who'll sit there and like take loads of notes and then jump in and be like, have you thought about this? But in this 6-hat thinking, it's like there are 6 sections, and then each time the person who's on the hot seat is like you, and then everyone chimes in, and then there's a short conversation, and then you move on to the next hat, which is the section. It's really cool. I don't know if you guys do show notes, but
I have not, but I will. I've just looked it up. It's Edward de Bono.
Edward de Bono, yeah.
And I've never heard this before, but I will. Oh, I see. The tool found some use in the United Kingdom innovation sector. Aha!
Ooh, how exciting!
Yes. So I will put that in the show notes and read about it because I have never heard of that before. That is cool.
It cuts the meetings down to an hour. I mean, I like the meetings, but I'm also I like getting on with my day. And the 6-hat just made it so efficient.
Yeah, I have one of my masterminds meets after we usually record the podcast. So we record the podcast, and then I have about enough time to go get a cup of tea, and then I have the mastermind. So I am talking for 2.5 hours straight. I'm like, guys, can we bring this to a close? I don't talk this much to other adults all week long. I am like a hermit most days.
My biggest conversations other than my girlfriend, my biggest conversations are absolutely with my mastermind groups. Yeah. So, living in the future.
Yeah, I know. Hannah gets out of the house and talks to other people. So
I get out of the house. I don't necessarily talk to other people. I have a single office in my day job.
So
it's like 6:30 here. I'm not sure I've left the house today. Oh no, I went to buy a drink.
You went to buy a what?
I interacted with men at the convenience store.
Oh, yay, Simon! It's so funny. My son's name is actually Simon, but here it's a very rare name. So he's the only one in his class. Whereas I know if we were in the UK, it would be a little more common.
There's several Simons, yeah.
So one of the questions that I have, and this began to say this earlier, but such is the nature of conversation. In every group I've ever been in, on every bulletin board, and I'm sure that we could talk about a few, there is the separation between the success stories and those who aren't there. And the success stories, the people making a couple $100,000 a month or whatever, their word goes. If you argue with them, they often take their ball and go home.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if they got to the point where they're making a couple $100,000 a month, they know something, but that doesn't make them 100% right all the time about everything. And
Yes.
there was one board I was on where I watched this happen, and I was just like, yeah, okay, take your ball and go home. And she did. How do you stop that from happening? Is it just the person's commitment to keep at it, or does it happen?
I moderate. I think just to touch on this thing, because I think this idea is important. It was one of the things I realized that could be valuable about this group is hopefully working out a way to solve this problem. I think just to say that the person who's like selling hundreds of thousands of books or whatever, and they'll say like, I did this for free and it's the only way you should ever do things. It's like, no, it worked for you, and yes, it did work for you, and that's awesome and great, but there's also the survivor bias, right? So it's like, you did it this way, and now you see that as the only way, whereas someone else could be entirely, and there's loads of examples of people who've been totally successful and haven't done perma-free or haven't done the other great innovation that has seen several people rocket to success. And I think it's hard to see other paths to success when you've been through your path to success, and you're going to recommend that path over other paths. And I think the more successful you are, the louder that becomes, maybe. I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah, it does.
So I think in terms of controlling that is, in the kind of the group that I've put together, it's the people are level-headed, and I think there's no one in there, and I'm not going to take credit for doing something right here because I don't know what I did, but there's no one in there shouting like, this is the way you should do things, and it is so awesome, and there should be no other way to do things ever. And people will say it's much more like, here is some data. Analyze this data how you want. Here is my interpretation of the data. Ask me anything. And then people will be like, what do you think about this? Do you think this would work in this situation? And then again, not taking credit for why this happens, but it could be yes or no, and there's probably an equal chance of those answers coming up. I don't really have a good answer because I'm not sure what I did.
No, allowing people, letting people know that they can contribute without either having an aura around them or necessarily not knowing as much because they're not selling as much. That's really important. Setting the tone, setting the intention. Oh, look, yeah. A mindset word. Setting the intention for what you're trying to get there.
Early on,
important.
There was an example of this happened, and it was really early on. And I was just like, listen, I'm going to close this thread. And I sent the person a private message, and I was like, I know you've done this, but this isn't the way I want this to work around here. And I think this was in like the really early days. And I think that kind of set a precedent of how I want people to behave, maybe. But then there are new members who've joined who were never really familiar with this like kerfuffle at the beginning of what happens. And yeah, sorry, I don't know.
I think the attitude comes through. There is a board that I know that we have all been on, that shall remain nameless, a writer's board, where the tone led by the moderators has changed so dramatically that you're not finding any of the really big success stories there anymore. They're like, I've had it with this. And it has changed the feeling of the board quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I have the same opinion, which is because I really like this place.
Yeah.
So there's something we've sort of mentioned it in passing, but that's also what I coach a lot on, and that's where I do a lot of my coaching work. That's mindset. And I saw that on your writing circle page, you do list sort of some mindsets and attitudes that you want your participants to embody and have. So I think your forum works very well because you sort of attract people of a similar mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the huge bases. You have a certain group with a similar mindset, and you have expectations of them and their behavior. And I think that works a lot. But the main question that I have, and that might be interesting for our listeners and viewers, is there any, or maybe a set of different mindsets that you would say are absolutely essential to have success as an indie author?
Abundance. Not my idea. It's been mentioned so many times. I'm just, the pie gets bigger. And this is, I think, in the indie author space in general, and I think the further you zoom out, the more selfish things become. But in general, I talk to people one-on-one. I know several other indie authors, and there's no hiding things. There's no secrets. It's like, I did this and it totally worked. Here's how you do it. And because there's enough readers for everyone, it's one of my favorite things about this whole industry, and that's just the abundance mindset that everyone has. And that's something in my group, I think it probably says it right there on the sales page, or it alludes to it for people who don't know this kind of, I don't know who coined the term abundance, but like this abundance mindset of like the opposite of the scarcity mindset, that, you know, it's not like there's two shops on the street and they're selling trousers or pants or whatever I should choose a national example, shirts. and there's the two stores and they're selling the same type of shirts. Those guys are not friends. But if you have two authors who are selling fantasy books on the same street, those guys are friends in this industry. And that's because there's enough people for everyone, and it's awesome, and it's a mindset that is totally essential.
As I've said on an earlier podcast, every time I see 50 Shades of Grey is at the top of the lists again. I don't write romance, I don't write billionaire stories, I have no interest in this, but every time I see that, I'm completely thrilled, because I'm like, she hasn't even maxed out the market for 50 Shades of Grey yet. There are so many readers out there that they are still buying this book. It's awesome. Yay. Yay, team E.L. James. And it really, I think that's incredibly important. The pie is getting bigger.
There's more millions of people born every day.
Yeah, and reading is not a small market.
I think it's actually getting bigger and bigger, especially because of the internet. I mean, it was one reason why I chose to write in English, because the English market is more or less the entire world, as opposed to the German market, which is still pretty big, but that's measured in millions, while the worldwide market is measured in billions. And so I think that is just amazing, and we can really reach them through our distributors. It's possible for someone in India to find and read my books. I just sent a signed print copy to someone in India who won it through a Goodreads giveaway, and I was so thrilled when I wrote out the address, and I thought, wow, someone's going to read my book in India. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
And so the world.
So one of the things about Masterminds that I've been in is we have a rule that you're not allowed to complain. You can say, boy, I had a really bummer week with sales, but then I will do X. I don't know if you know this about writers, but sometimes we can really complain with the best of them.
Is that right?
You probably haven't run across this. Maybe I just got on that. How do you handle this? How do you say, you know what? Stop. Get over it. This isn't the place. You have to concentrate on something better here.
My one is always, complaining is short-term, success is long-term. Like, you can anything that I ever complain about, it's not like, oh, I'm never going to be successful at anything. That's not a complaint. there's I never find myself complaining about the long-term outlook. Like, in the long term, you can see, like, how should I put this? Complaining is things you've got on your plate, and I don't have this in my mastermind, so I sure whine. I guess I maybe whine a bit, but in the long term, it's kind of like I'm going to get over that, and next week it won't be an issue, and I'll keep grinding away, and I'll keep working really hard, and in 2 years, I'm going to be somewhere awesome. Just because, and that's another thing, like abundance. I just believe in, if you work hard, the better off you are going to be creatively. In terms of success, in terms of finance, however you want to measure it, hard work is totally correlated to that. And yeah, it's kind of, complaining is just short term.
Yeah.
You can whine about stuff, or maybe you shouldn't. I actually wrote down, start with something positive and not allowed to complain as things I would probably like to add to my masterminds. So a valuable call for me.
Woohoo! Sorry. So you were talking about mindset things. So one is abundance. Absolutely. Totally there with you. Any other key mindset?
Yes. Yeah, you got to work really hard. I think, like, work hard and work smart. I live in Prague, and I went to an in-person, it was like an afternoon where there were people there who I didn't know, but it's kind of like one of these one-day mastermind things where you go, and it was part of another big group I'm part of, like a community online, and they organize like a meeting in Prague. And so there's like 15 of us who sit down in this conference room, and you get 5 minutes to talk about your business, and then you get like 5 minutes, and everyone in the room is just ripping you apart, but like in a good way. Like, this isn't going to work. You should be doing this. Have you tried this? And you're just like, okay, take some notes, sweat a little. And I was this was right at the start. I had just stopped freelancing, and in this mastermind, just for the day, the people who were really successful, and it wasn't for writers, this was just entrepreneurs. The people who were really successful were working really hard, and it was kind of like, oh, that really sucks. But then also it was like, because I was a freelancer and I was taking too much vacation and not working very hard and all of this stuff. But then I was like, whoa, if I work really hard, I will also be successful. And so I started working really hard the next day, and it just transformed my world.
Yeah.
I quit freelancing the next month and just started podcasting. I started writing. I started I also do several things on YouTube and all of these things, and just started pouring my life into these things, just like all day, every day. I hired like an assistant before I needed an assistant. I hired like an audio editor to edit all my audiobooks, because I was like sitting there for days, like,
oh Lord,
like cutting, and I'm like, what am I doing? Work hard, work smart. Yeah, that's. Yeah. I feel like abundance was really good, but also like working hard is it's a hard truth. And like at that meeting, I was like, oh, so it's not like just luck. It's really just grinding away.
One thing I want to ask you,
yes.
as I'm still trying to process what work hard means for me, because I'm still running the house here, and I'm the chauffeur, and I run various things, so it's kind of like I'm not going to be able to put 10 hours a day into this, but that's okay. Shoot, where was I going with this? I've completely forgotten.
Which part of your life are you working hard? All of it.
Yes, all of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I know one thing. So the mastermind where I met Hannah requires quite a commitment to join, and I won't say how much, but I will say that it was more than my first car, which was a used car, but this is more money than my first car. Yours is $400 a year. What are you doing, dude? $400 a year? Come on! Don't you want people to really commit to your mastermind?
It was more. I don't know. Maybe I'm just cheap, but I was like, I'm not a part of any super expensive mastermind. I'm part of one that is more expensive than that. but not by much, and it's really good. And I was like, if I think I can deliver for that much.
I found that that's a really good way to get people to show up. I think probably $100 a quarter is pretty good. That reminds people, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I know the Sterling and Stone guys have started a mastermind. That's several $1,000s a year for writers.
Yeah,
I don't know what comes
I
along with
know
that.
people who do mastermind groups as well who charge more, but I don't know. I don't have a good reason. I just feel this was like it was basically a little bit less than this other mastermind group I was paying for, and I was like, this other mastermind group is really awesome. I can probably make mine awesome, and I think the people who are in it were awesome. So I'm like, okay, I'll just make it the same. Because
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
We'll allow it this time.
Thank you.
I know you're like, why am I getting badgered by this chick in California? What?
No, I beg people every week for an hour, so it's only fair that some badgering comes around.
I don't remember you badgering anyone on your podcast. Seriously, this podcast.
Like a badgering them sometimes.
I heard that Simon was getting together with some listeners in London or something, and I'm like, I want to go to that. That's going to be a party. Simon is always having a good time.
Yeah.
So not a lot of badgering.
Yeah. Well, it's kind.
So
I often find I'm like, and then what? And then what? And then tell me about this. But I'm glad it doesn't sound like badgering.
No, the people come to you and they want to talk about things. So do you have any other notes for people on how to run a mastermind for writers? Like I said, most of the writers groups that I've been in have broken up because it did devolve into kvetching, which is a technical term that means complaining endlessly. And everyone always focused on what was going so wrong. So what advice do you have for people who are like, well, maybe a mastermind is a good idea, but I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a mastermind's about commitment, but then you're also at that stage of, is it for me? And it's hard to commit to something if you're not even sure if it's for you yet. The first mastermind I was ever in, no one had been in a mastermind before. We had this document from it was a forum that had masterminds as a part of it. So there was like this whole documentation of, it's like, you should do this and then do this, and here's a GoToMeeting account, and off you go. And we were like, okay, let's do this. And we all kind of said, we'll give it a try. And then that lasted for like a year, and it basically devolved, not because either any of us were unhappy, it was just kind of our businesses had all grown, but in kind of different directions. So like we had all been, it was an accountability group, and we all came together, and it was like, okay, so each week we do this, and then a year later it was like, what we're talking about is totally unrelated. Like one of us was like, okay, you need to finish the engineering schematics on the machine that you're building for a client. And I was like, I need to finish recording this book and get 3 different podcast episodes out. And the other guy was like, I need to do some designs for clients. And it was all like, it was great at the beginning, but then as we grew, it kind of devolved, because then I needed to find a group with people doing similar things to me. Like I wanted to find people who were podcasting or doing media stuff. And this, so that was a positive end. But I think in terms of starting one, I liked doing it with people who hadn't done it before. We were all kind of in it together, and we were all kind of like finding our way. And now I'm in groups with people who've been in masterminds before, and it's not a wildly different experience. It's again really positive. And I think if you've got friends who are kind of the same mindset, and if they've got an abundance mindset, and if they are really hardworking, also a plus, and they can commit to half an hour a week, or an hour every 2 weeks, or an hour a week, or whatever you want, try it out, because it was an absolute game changer for me. And if you're on the fence, give it a go. And I think we've talked about ones like I run like a forum, which is kind of like a larger mastermind, and you can self-organize or whatever that you pay for. You don't have to, and you guys are part of masterminds as well, which have an entrance fee. I think if you're on the fence, you don't need to necessarily go and pay for one up front. I think you can just find some friends and get them together on Skype. And if you haven't done it before, I think that's a great way to start. I don't know if you disagree with me on that, because I know some people are like, there should be a leader and there should be a system. But for me, it's kind of like, because I'm cheap, I'm like, I don't want to pay for it until I know I like it.
No, the only rule I'd add to that is you have to be focused on what you're talking about, because people are like, oh, so I broke up with my boyfriend this week, and then my car wouldn't start. And it's like, no, let's focus on what we're here for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think having a secretary... Sorry.
Maybe it's also okay to go into a mastermind and know it's not going to last the rest of your life, and just be open to the change that's happening, and that maybe in a year, like you said, with your friends that grew into different directions, split off content-wise, that you just are open to the idea that masterminds shift and change and sometimes end, and then you find a new one. Like everything in life, really.
And I think, all of the masterminds I am in and I have been in, these people are my friends, and just because our professional relationship of getting together and talking business ends, that doesn't mean that we can't get on Skype and talk about the car breaking down or talk about whatever, because then it's a friendship and it's not a mastermind, and that's also awesome. Like, I've met, these people are all over the world, Europe, Australia, America, and I've met 60% of them, I would say. Awesome. Over half in real life, and we've shared beers together. And if they were mastermind people in the past, it's like someone I've never met before, and I'm British, so it's different. You'd see them at the airport and you give them a hug and be like, "Hey man, what's up? Let's get a beer. You're much taller than I expected." Was one thing. There was a Dutch guy in one of my masterminds. He was really tall, and I had no idea, because I just see his face every week on the screen for like a year. And I was like, "Whoa, it was unexpected." But yeah, I think, sorry, the point I'm trying to get at here is, don't be afraid to move on. I mean, things end, businesses grow, and that's a positive thing, and then you need to find somewhere else. And that's great.
Cool.
Right, that was awesome.
And I feel bad, because on that point about not waffling on, I waffled. I do waffle.
I think we're really encouraging our listeners to go and find people of like mindsets and in the same interest field, and just go and do it, because it's life-changing.
Yeah. Find the possibility. I've been with too many writers who are like, "Oh, this is so hard. Oh, this is," especially I was down in Hollywood for a while, and that can really be a downer. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for joining us for this hour of our podcast. This was really fabulous. I really appreciate it.
Diane, Hannah, it was a real pleasure. I've been interviewed a lot about writing. I've never been interviewed about masterminds, and I love masterminds. Your message about just go and try it is exactly what I would say. Just go out and try it, because it's awesome.
There are so many great podcasts about the business, about real physical strategies that people employ. That our podcast is a little softer. We're talking about mindset and about how to get yourself into the place where you can actually go and do these things, and you're not sitting around thinking about your car being broken down or whatever.
Yeah, I'm a mindset person. I think that is as valuable, if not more valuable, than the kind of practical advice stuff.
Yeah, I personally think it's fundamental. If you know all the business stuff, but you can't bring yourself to write, what's going to happen?
Yes.
And whenever something changes in the business, like the changes in Kindle Unlimited last week, man, you go on a writer's board or one of these closed writers groups I'm in, and everyone is running around screaming, everything, because they don't know what their income is going to be next month. And I'm like, okay, I can't do this right now. I need to focus on my happy place and get my writing done.
We definitely had a thread about it, but the thread was more like, how are we going to make this pay us more? Was
Yeah.
That's an awesome mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that sums it up rather well, because everyone kind of came in and was like, because they're on other forums as well, and we're like, everyone's kind of screaming about this. This is what I'm going to do, and I think it's going to be a winner. And it's like, cool.
That
awesome.
is an abundant mindset.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in Simon's mastermind group, you can. I will have the link in the show notes, but it is the Writers Circle, and there's a link on his podcast page, which is rockingselfpublishing.com.
Yeah. If you go to that page, there's like a big link on the right that you can go and check it out. But like I say, not essential to being in a mastermind. Just go out and try it. It's super cool.
Yeah. Get together with some friends and agree on the rules beforehand.
Yes.
Don't talk about breaking up with your boyfriend. God, I don't really.
Show up to the meetings.
Yeah, show up to the meetings. I gotta say, that's the one thing that makes me craziest. I'm there every week. Could you put this on your calendar, please?
Yes.
So thank you very much, and check out Simon's podcast. It is awesome. I have found out so many things and heard of so many writers that I wouldn't have otherwise heard of. And he's very positive, which really improves my mindset when I listen to him.
It's all those mindset podcasts I listen to.
Do you have any mindset recommendations for us?
I say that. I'll bring up my podcatcher and I'll tell you. I know there's one called 10x Talk, which is amazing on abundance, which is like 10 and then a big X and then talk. Sometimes it gets a bit waffly, but in terms of talking about abundance and the pie getting bigger, it's not a writing podcast. It's like a mindset and business podcast, but that's classic on this abundance stuff. I also listen to the usual rounds of self-publishing podcasts, which I'm sure everyone listens to. Joanna Penn, Sell More Books, Self-Publishing Podcast.
Okay. Great. Well.
Great. Awesome.
So that's it for this week's podcast of the 21st Century Writer. My name, oh goodness, we've gone for some time. My name is Diane Patterson.
And I'm Hannah Steenbach, and our guest is
Simon Whistler.
And hope to talk to you again next week. Or not you specifically, Simon, but the people out there.
I got you.
You are more than welcome to come back and join us next week. So thanks very much, and so bye.